Why is it that some people embrace fear? Fear from stepping out and doing something different. I don't fear this, but sometimes people look at others differently when trying something different in life. Yeah. So fear stands for false evidence that appears real. False evidence that appears real. Perception becomes reality. I think, therefore I am, like the Rodin sculpture. So whenever I see a crisis in business, I see it as an opportunity. And I encourage all of you, please, to run to your fears in business. Because you know what? Your competitors have those fears as well, and they'll run away from them. So if you're terrified of public speaking like I used to be, I want you to run towards that fear and embrace it and learn to love it. If you're really intimidated by accounting, take my course, Introduction to Finance and Accounting, and you'll learn to love accounting, and you'll learn how to read financial statements like a good book. I want you to run towards your fears. Always, always, always conquer your fears. And for me, for years, my biggest fear was public speaking. Like I would rather have died than get up there in front of everybody. And even at my wedding, and for those of you who took my complete presentation course, at my wedding, what I did was I actually, I filmed a really funny video, which was me getting ready for the wedding that morning and everything went wrong. And I put that video, if you're curious, whatever, it's in that course, the complete public speaking course. But one of the reasons I did that, I've never really opened up about this, is because I was so scared of getting up there in front of 250 people at Roma's place in Etobicoke, which is where we got married, our wedding reception. I was scared. And I thought, you know what? If I just kind of introduce the video, then show the video, and then say a couple of words, then I'll be okay. So that's what I did. And then it got to the point, man, where I was just, it was holding me back. It was holding me back. And the high school I went to in Oakville, Ontario, Canada, called Appleby, what happens is the graduating class, every year, you have to, in the chapel service, you have to give a speech on whatever you want. And I think I was one of just a handful of people, maybe the only one that found a way out of it. I know. It's embarrassing. It's bad. But I couldn't take it anymore, and I was so scared. And so what I did was this. I said, Chris, I've got to conquer my fear. And so what I did was I volunteered in the prison system here in Redwood City, California, in the McGuire Correctional Facility. I got a police badge and everything. And I did it through my church. It's not a religious thing, but I did it through my church. And what happened was the big turning point for me was this. I would go every Sunday. And, a priest would come and we go through all the security lines and obviously they'd frisk us and all that stuff. And we go into the prison system. And I loved talking to and counseling and just helping, those young guys in their 20s that had a deadbeat father. There's no such thing as a deadbeat mother, but there's many deadbeat fathers out there. And I just kind of counsel them and talk to them. And the priest would come and conduct a service as well. And there's 30 or 40 inmates in orange jumpsuits that would be in that service. And what happened was one Sunday I showed up and the warden said, Haroun, I said, actually it's Haroun, that's okay, that's my last name. Haroun, the priest is not here today. You're gonna have to conduct mass. I'm like, dude, I don't know how to do that. I mean, I'm a Eucharistic minister, which means I can give the bread out, but I don't know how to do that. I'm not gonna, no. He said, oh, it's easy. Here's the pamphlets. And so, and again, it's not a religious thing here, but I just want to mention what happened to me. I'm opening up to you. What happened was this. So for those of you that go to church or religious service, usually what happens is the religious leader reads from the text. And so, I read from the gospel. And what happens is after that reading, the priest, what they do is they give a speech on that gospel passage. And they prepared all week. And so I got up there and I was reading, from the gospel. It's just a pamphlet that all the prisoners get there. And I was reading from it. And by the way, my knees were shaking. But when you get up there and you feel nervous, don't worry, you don't look nervous. You don't. You feel it, but you never look as nervous as you feel. Okay. And I was reading from it. And then the gospel was about, confidence and faith and hope. And after that was done, I had to give that speech. I'm like, oh my God, this is it, Chris. This is it. If you're fear of heights, this is you jumping out of the airplane. This is it. And so I stood there and I was supposed to give a speech on confidence, hope, faith. And I said this, and this is a turning point for me. And I looked around. I'll never forget it. I looked around, and there was, 30 or 40, whatever, inmates in orange jumpsuits like this, right? Like really like FU kind of thing. And actually one of them had FU tattoo right here. It was bizarre, man. They're like this, very close. And I stood there and I said, "Do you believe in God?" And the inmates went, "Yeah." And then I said, "Does God believe in you?" And they said, "Yeah." And I said, "Well, if you don't believe in yourself, then you might be questioning your faith." And then what happened was their arms weren't crossed anymore, and they were like, And then I just went from there, and I conquered my fear that day in the McGuire Correctional Facility in Redwood City, California. I ran to my fear, and now my biggest source of joy is public speaking. I love it. I love getting up there and trying to humbly, inspiring people to present as well, and just run to your fear. Another fear of mine was accounting. For ages, I sucked at it. In fact, when I was an undergrad at McGill University, I was so bad at it, I got a D in accounting. Yes, that's right, folks. I teach you accounting, and I got a D. Am I a hypocrite? Maybe. But what happened was I got a D because I was memorizing accounting, and I wasn't understanding it. And in high school, you can do well by memorizing stuff. But when you get to university, you have to understand stuff. And if you understand, then you remember it forever. And so I was memorizing, why does assets equal liabilities plus equity? And then I started understanding. I took it again, and I got higher than a D. Not that much higher, but I got higher than a D after that. And so that fear of mine went away after I started to understand it and embrace it. And I conditioned myself to love it. I conditioned myself to love accounting and finance. And I love reading financial statements like a good book. It's just fun for me. So the bottom line there is just run to your fears. Again, fear stands for false evidence that appears real. And when it comes to people looking differently at you, when you're trying something different in life, I don't want you to give a damn. I don't want you to care. I'm not telling you to be rude or disingenuous, but just don't give a damn. And if you don't care what people think of you, you will reach an awesome level of personal freedom and happiness.